As the Money Burns is an original podcast by Nikki Woodard. Based on historical research, this is a deep exploration into what happened to a set of actual heirs and heiresses to some of America's most famous fortunes when the Great Depression hits. Each episode has 3 primary sections. Section 1 is a narrative story. Section 2 goes deeper into the historical facts. Section 3 focuses on contemporary, emotional, and personal connections. Story recap. Barbara Hutton and Prince Alexis Mdivani are officially engaged, and tennis sensation Frank Shields goes missing, only to be found out to sea. Now back to As the Money Burns. All That Matters, Part 1 of 2. This episode is dedicated to my mother. A royal wedding draws a large crowd, but could the honeymoon be over already? Part 1 of 2. Section 1. Story. Part 1. Plenty of excitement surrounds the wedding of the next American dollar princess to another semi-impoverished royal. Semi, only due to a very recent, lucrative divorce settlement. Young heiress, the fashionista and slightly chubby Barbara Hutton is heading to the altar with the ruggedly handsome, newly divorced Russian Prince Alexis Mdivani. She has been dreaming of this day, her wedding, and him since she was a young teen, never daring to really dream he would actually be hers. Though she claims he is her best friend, her feelings run far deeper for this lonely, poor little rich girl. He, too, has stars in his eyes, but that might come more from her sparkling fortune and jewels than her, per se. Much like his first marriage to socialite, it-girl heiress Louise Van Allen, Alexis becomes more and more royal as he gets closer to Barbara's substantial fortune. Since marriage in France requires a civil ceremony, he does not want a religious one. But Barbara wants to set her wedding apart and incorporate some exotic rites. In this situation, Eastern Orthodox Christian of the Russian Imperial and Byzantine dynasties. To accomplish this simpler task than a prolonged Catholic confirmation, Alexis converts within the leading months by attending several religious lectures on better living to Barbara's amusement. The later location for the religious ceremony will be located in the 8th arrondissement in Paris at the Russian Orthodox Church officially known as the Alexander Nevsky Cathedral, or more colloquially sometimes referred to as l'Église russe, translated as the Russian Church. The invitation sent out included a description of the location as the official church of the exiled Russian nobility since the revolution. Therein lies the rub for many dispossessed Russian nobility and aristocracy who relocated to Paris after the Bolshevik Revolution. Many decry the Georgian-based Mdivani clan are not actually royals nor nobility of the now lost empire. First, Georgian princess must be from the ruling royal family, Bagratonis, who joined the Russian Empire while keeping their titles intact. Secondly, they cite the Mdivani name is excluded from the 1850 imperial decree of 50 Georgian princes, nor are they listed among the 700 families in 1892 by the Russian imperial government Department of Heraldry. They do, however, acknowledge General Zachary Mdivani's service to the last Tsar, Nicholas II Romanov, and with that would accept a claim to potential aristocracy, just not royalty. Pesky arguments for sure. One ardent dissenter, the former Marshal of Nobility in Georgia, Nicholas Dadiani, claims that most actual noble and aristocratic exiles will not attend the wedding in protest of this phony prince and his press-grabbing siblings. And right now, the press is in a flurry of all things Mdivani. And they aren't the only ones in protest. But the next two might be a shocker for some. It never fails as love blossoms for one, it withers for another. The same vine might have dying and blooming flowers, but eventually all things go away. Inevitably. Because as one marriage ends, another begins. Or could it be as one marriage begins, another ends. Or in this case, several ending? Friday, June 9th, 1933, Los Angeles. Actress and dancer, girl with the bee-stung lips, Mae Murray files for divorce from Prince David Mdivani. She charges him with unreasonable jealousy. This is their second divorce attempt. One was thwarted many years earlier in August 1931. They share a son, Coran. Then, only 5 days later. Wednesday, June 14th, 1933, Los Angeles. Through an attorney, opera singer Mary McCormick announces her intention to begin legal action for separation and potential divorce from Prince Serge Mdivani. The couple has been separated for 2 months. Among the allegations, Serge struck Mary with his fist back in October 1932, and more recently locked her in her room to prevent her from keeping social engagements. She would also like restitution of a $40,000 loan she made to him, for which he has only repaid $500. That would be the equivalent of $966,000 loan, with only $12,000 repaid in 2024. Supposedly, they have joint community property of $100,000, or $2.41 million in 2024. And she is requesting a $600 monthly spousal support, plus reimbursement of her $7,500 attorney's fees, today's equivalent of $14,500 monthly support, and $181,000 for her attorney. Oh, Mary doesn't understand a Mdivani. Mdivani spend fortunes, not make them. This songbird hasn't been singing the best tune after her longtime friend and advisor Sam Insull fled the United States after his energy empire Ponzi scheme imploded, leading to more financial hardship. Could the Mdivani spell finally be broken? Leading up to the ceremony, both to-be former Princess Mdivanis directly warned Barbara about the troubles of marrying a Mdivani, to no avail. No one is going to deter Barbara from marrying her prince. She is in the flurry of multiple receptions and plans and details. Days before her wedding, future sister-in-law, the mesmerizing Princess Rusidana Rusidivani Serge, hosts a reception for dear Barbara. Barbara's family and friends arrive aboard the German ocean liner Bremen. Prince Sergei and Prince David arrived a little earlier for their father, General Zachary Mdivani's funeral, and stayed for the wedding. Somewhere, former Mdivani sister-in-law Louise Van Allen's heart must be breaking. She stays out of sight, and the only Mdivani princess not to openly use the title nor speak about her relationship. Yet Louise is mentioned constantly in comparison, and now not so favorably as attention turns towards Barbara, who has become a much more glamorous prospect, even down to the description of their engagement rings. Louise's conventional and unworldly large square-cut diamond platinum ring, to Barbara's unique, sophisticated, and exotic black pearl ring. Giddily caught up in all the excitement, Barbara even willingly gets interviewed and quoted by various reporters. She is finally turning into a glorious swan. Tuesday, June 20th, 1933, Paris. 3 p.m. civil ceremony at the 16th arrondissement. The crowd is less than anticipated, with only 20 spectators to watch the comings and goings, but almost 200 reporters and 18 cameras provide more fervor. In a gray limousine, Barbara arrives with her father, Franklin Hutton. Barbara emerges wearing a pearl gray print suit with cape by Coco Chanel, and tops it with a pictured hat with organdy. Her only jewels present that day are a jade necklace and that black pearl engagement ring set in platinum. She wears a mink scarf, appropriately and tastefully chic. Anywhere from 30 and some say 50 family members are also noted in attendance. Entering the building, Aunt Jessie Woolworth Hutton is amazed at all the flashing cameras and comments, "Hollywood at its best." Prince Alexis looks a bit overdone, wearing formal attire of a morning coat with white spats and silk hat. Accompanying him is the Georgian minister in Paris, Raki Chenkeli. The prince holds a post through the Georgian delegation, which mainly involves him answering questions about his actual lineage, while he also enjoys having a diplomatic passport and special parking privileges. Inside, cameras click away at each and every tedious step. Assistant Mayor of Paris, Daniel Marin, performs the actual ceremony and gives a flattering speech about the beauty and prosperity of their merger. Like a good disaffected noble, Alexis dozes off briefly during the section referring to his ancient nobility and Barbara's modern industrial aristocracy. At the end of the ceremony, they do not share a kiss, holding that off for the bigger ceremony. As Alexis scribbles away his signature with a gold pen, he remarks, "I'll sign any papers blindfolded, because I love Barbara. And that's all that matters." Official witnesses for Barbara are her father, Franklin Hutton, and Aunt Jessie, while the prince's witnesses are his brother-in-law, Spanish painter Joseph Maria Serge, and by differing accounts, either sister Princess Russie or the Georgian minister Cinchelli. As is customary, the bridal couple makes a donation for the poor of 25,000 francs, or $1,210 US, which is the equivalent of $29,000 today. Once the ceremony is over, the newlyweds part ways. Barbara goes back to the Ritz-Carlton and will not see Alexis again for 2 days until their official church ceremony. This evening, the bride hosts a party for her friends, despite the fact that Barbara is noted not to smoke nor drink. Separately, the bridegroom will have his own bachelor party. The press is in overdrive, covering every aspect of the upcoming wedding and honeymoon, with details pouring out even days before and after the actual events. Such as, there is much discussion over her new trousseau closet, both her day clothes as well as potential lingerie attire. The cost, the colors, the outfits, the designers, mostly Patou and Chanel, the envy of a life of luxury when others are living under such meager means. Beach pajamas, tea and cocktail pajamas, tennis frocks, black velvet evening jacket with ermine sleeves, Chanel star prints and diaphanous afternoon frocks. One evening gown features a crisp organdy off-shoulder drape embroidered with small flowers. Another mousseline evening gown has red, green, violet, and yellow flowers and shoulder strap of red garnet velvet and dashing sash belt. Plenty of hats, and her going-away outfit for the honeymoon will be brown chantanelle. Somewhere there's a claim Barbara likes to wear paste jewelry. Do they actually know her at all? Maybe she does. But her actual jewelry collection, and the ones alone she will soon receive? There is, after all, an extra room at the Ritz solely to hold the gifts, with detectives protecting them. Stepmother Irene Curly Hutton salivates and covets over all the extravagant and beautiful gifts already piling up. No way Irene will get an equivalent gift this time. Only the bride gets all, even if she hardly needs or wants them. Among the gifts so far detailed, the groom receives Argentine polo ponies and pearl shirt studs from the bride. The groom gives his bride a rope of pearls. Father Franklin Hutton, jade necklace for the bride, and a motorboat Alibaba for the groom. Princess Nina Mdivani Uberik, 2 extravagant embroidered Georgian ceremonial gowns for the bride. Prince David Mdivani, a diamond-encrusted Cartier clock. Prince Sergei Mdivani, gold vanity case for Barbara and gold cufflinks for Alexis. Princess Russie and Serge painted a large landscape of a Spanish seacoast. Aunt Helena Woolworth McCann, ruby and diamond earrings. Aunt Jessie Woolworth Donahue, likely some pearls. Uncle E.F. Hutton and Marjorie Merriweather Post Hutton, a diamond brooch in the shape of a polo pony. Other gifts include diamond bracelets, George III silverware, silver tea service, gold toilet sets, Baccarat crystal, Limoges porcelain. There's just so much to cover, and the press definitely kicks into hyperactivity, covering all the Mdivani love matches leading up to the biggest marriage a fortune hunter might ever secure. But as one series of articles point out, there are a few other former royal and commoner marital matches catching notice. Earlier on June 3, 1933, Prince Wilhelm, formerly of Prussia, marries an Italian and Prussian aristocrat, though not approved as royal blood. Thus, he loses any potential claim if the throne is ever restored. This will also lead to him being disinherited despite being the favorite grandson of the deposed Prussian Kaiser Wilhelm II. Though with no more power, the Kaiser retains enough wealth to still be one of the richest men in the world. The Kaiser also considers himself to be a wonderful matchmaker, but in the past was shocked and disappointed when his own 61-year-old sister remarried a waiter without his consent. Wednesday, June 21st, 1933. The Spanish Prince of Wales, the Prince of Asturias, Infante Alfonso weds his beautiful commoner wife in Lausanne, Switzerland, then honeymoons in France. Both Barbara and the Cuban bride's wedding gowns are featured in an article with adjacent images. While Barbara gets full focus, the Prince of Asturias gets much smaller mention. As the latter heads off on his honeymoon, he sends an emissary to request a pardon from his father, the deposed King Alfonso XIII of Spain, who still protests that marriage. Meanwhile, his new bride will spend the first day of her honeymoon confined to her hotel room with a fever after the previous day's fatigue and excitement. Other notable marital prospects, Sweden and Romania too might have some errant royals. But there is one royal, the royal, who doesn't seem to be joining the matrimonial brigade. The 39-year-old perennial bachelor, Prince of Wales, Prince David, future King Edward VIII of England, Duke of Windsor. Secretly, he's switching his married paramours from Viscountess Thelma Morgan Furness, the twin sister of Gloria Morgan Vanderbilt and aunt of young Gloria Vanderbilt, to Wallis Simpson, future Duchess of Windsor. But nonetheless, the real attention grabber is the extravagant wedding ceremony still to happen. In less than 24 hours, Barbara will have the grand wedding of her dreams. But will it be all that she ever hoped for? And more? To be continued in Part 2. Section 2, History and Historiography. This is a winding tale indeed, and one we have been heading towards for a while. Did you get my little hints along the way? I have planted many seeds in the story that are only now coming to fruition, and there are many more still yet to blossom. As I have mentioned before, I have spent several years trying to develop this idea as a television series, and when I switched to making it a podcast, I didn't want to lose the original intention. I didn't want to make this standard one-and-done documentary. I wanted to have the emotional investment over time for when the betrayals and twists are revealed. I didn't want to neatly wrap up the story nor tell it quick and succinct. I wanted to embellish, relish, and savor what really happens and how. So from the beginning of shaping this podcast, the question then became, what do I reveal when? And the biggest of those reveals was the truth about Prince Alexis Mdivani and his siblings. A detail not mentioned or barely acknowledged or hinted, the nature of their titles is not mentioned or barely acknowledged or hinted in only a few sources. It was only one source that gave the full background of all the siblings and their shenanigans. And oh, they are a handful. By the way, there are some modern websites that revisit the Mdivanis and actually defend their royal claim. This is, of course, the perspective of those descended from or affiliated with the formerly Russian Soviet state of Georgia. I hate to disappoint them. The Mdivanis, for all purposes, it seems to have well earned their reputations as con artists and pretenders. However, no one back then denies their flair and ability to give a good ride during their seduction attempts. And there was a permissive culture of a good pretender was acceptable if entertaining and not too damaging. Thus, I knew this not so inconsequential information is vitally important story-wise. If I revealed it too early, then it takes away the fun. You would be screaming, "Why is everyone so stupid?" Or brush it off with an, "Of course that would happen." Pondering my choices, I discussed thoroughly my options with my most avid and voracious of future listeners, my mother. I told her the points in the story when it might come into play, and she agreed I should wait as long as possible, at least until this point in the story, their wedding. As the podcast began, she got really invested in what was happening, always demanding to know what next. Unfortunately, she doesn't get to hear them anymore. I lost her over 3 years ago, very quickly to a terminal illness. As she was dying, we knew there probably wouldn't be enough time to make the big ones, the debutante balls, the weddings. So she made me tell her over and over again all the good episodes and plots and characters before she passed. And now I'm finally at the wedding of Barbara Hutton and Prince Alexis Mdivani, the midpoint of our tale of love and fortune. I have been working on this story for over 11 years now and have amassed quite a bit of information, which I'm revealing to you. Yet I had no idea that Providence would bring the perfect lead into the reveal. Because as I got closer to this date, naturally within the real timeline, more protests came up over the fake royal lineage. And their marriage led to an explosion in newspaper coverage, especially as it was tinged with scandal and royalty. As well, that wasn't the only wedding of interest. Other adjoining articles discussed the romantic nature of both this wedding and June being the prime wedding season even back then. Several articles referred to not only Barbara and Prince Alexis, but the Spanish Prince of Asturias and Prussian Prince Wilhelm, and other royal marriages, especially to morganatic, meaning non-royal, unequal marriages. There was a 6-part syndicated series, It Must Be Love, dedicated to unusual and high-profile marriages. Part 1, Barbara and her prince. Part 2, Prince Wilhelm and Prince of Asturias marrying commoners and being disinherited. Part 3, an American flower heiress marries a librarian. Part 4, a Hollywood star marries her childhood sweetheart. Part 5, a wealthy financier banker marries a waitress. And Part 6, a British earl marries the white daughter of an Indian Raja. It seems, even in times such as the Great Depression, everyone is interested in a love story, especially royal ones, fake or not, and maybe even more so. Section 3, Contemporary and Personal Relevance. I started this story long ago, and now we are in one of the major moments, which is why I am telling this story. I've always been good at research since high school. I recently met up and had lunch with my former History Fair sponsor, and I was explaining all the work I was doing with my podcast, both research and media technology. Since it had been many years since we last saw each other in person or had a serious conversation, there was much to catch up on. We laughed about how I keep going back to what I did in high school and discussed how it keeps me going through the other tough times in life. I am very grateful for her and the rest of my long list of extraordinary teachers in helping me develop who I am as an intellectual, an individual, and as a person. By the way, my mother was one of those teachers, my actual 5th grade teacher, and the most primary one throughout my life. You should have heard the notes she used to give me on this podcast. Not flowery praise, actual critical notes. I miss them even more now. Though I haven't succeeded in several of my goals, I have never given up on myself. While current struggles are causing a few delays, there remains a deep burning passion to tell this whole story. This isn't a normal history story or just a basic biography, but an amalgamation of several stories that go deep into the experiences of being human. It goes back to a stage in life when things should be perfect, on the verge of beginning your adult life. Yet somehow things go terribly wrong, both in personal endeavors such as love, as well as grand, worldwide societal shift. I am pleased that this isn't just a story about facts or events, but of people in a way we can hopefully relate. After all, history is the story of the human experience. The fact that we are still in the process of our world recalculating and resituating itself and us of these last few years can still be confusing. It's interesting to look at a different past and see how their present evolved into their futures. A few listeners have reached out to tell me their stories and connections, and I would love to hear more. What were some of your hopes and dreams? Did you succeed or fail? In what ways? Did you get the love of your life? Did you lose him or her? What was the one thing you ever really wanted but never could openly admit? Were you ever betrayed? By whom? Over what? I hope you keep listening, as this story is getting to the dark and juicy parts. While I was prepping to record my first episode, I ran across a dilemma. What should I do for music? I looked around and luckily discovered Past Perfect Vintage Music, a wonderfully digitally restored collection from the 1920s, 1930s, and 1940s. This special touch has been universally praised and has been a part of every episode. This podcast showcases only a sample of their quite large and extensive collection. And now they have Past Perfect Vintage Radio available via Amazon's Alexa, TuneIn Radio, and MyTuner Radio apps. Take a peek. Links in the notes and transcript. If you enjoy As the Money Burns, then please share, like, and subscribe. Next, when we return to As the Money Burns, a large crowd gathers for a fairy tale royal wedding. But will the honeymoon have a happy ending? Part 2 to be continued. Until then, As the Money Burns is an original podcast written, produced, and voiced by Nikki Woodard based on historical research. Archival music has been provided by Past Perfect Vintage Music. Check out their website at www.pastperfect.com. Please come visit us at As the Money Burns via GoodPods, X, formerly Twitter, Facebook now Meta, or Instagram. Transcripts, timeline, episode guide, and character bios are available at asthemoneyburns.com.